The first time we see the people who've decided to come to the pavements, to come to the streets to see him, to say goodbye, to say thank you. Applause along the streets of Rome as Pope Francis makes his way to his final resting place. The police have promised that the whole route will be barricaded for security reasons, but this really was Pope Francis returning to the people. The pictures breaking up there as it goes through the tunnel, as it makes its way towards some of the famous elements of Rome, the helicopter in the sky. The Roman Coliseum was a particular request from Pope Francis on his way to the papal Basilica, where he has chosen to be buried. Santa Maria Maggiore. He went there more than 100 times, most specifically before and after his travels. And the travels were unusual. The first to visit Iraq, Abu Dhabi. The hope was that he would return at some point to Argentina. He was not well enough to do that recently. So let's bring in now Augusto Sampini Davis, Argentine priest from the Diocese of Buenos Aires, former secretary of the Vatican dicastery and advisor to the Catholic charity CAFOD. You're watching these pictures, you've no doubt watched the service. Your thoughts and reflections on what you've seen from the Vatican today.
Good morning, thanks, Anna. And I think that it's worth, perhaps it's worth remembering that the Pope was from the peripheries, starting from Argentina, as you mentioned, but also from and for the poor, the marginalized, migrants and refugees, social movements, the sick, you name it. I mean, he was from them and for them, and also from and for the people and the peoples. And that's why he was promoting a culture of dialogue and inclusion, and also from and for the planet, or what we call the common home. I think that's 3P, peripheries, peoples, and planet, for the common home, provide three main characteristics of the Pope that perhaps we should honor today. And also maybe, as we saw the funeral, a 4P I would add, that is, he was a Pope who started lots of processes of change, but some of them were very radical, and both inside the church and maybe helping outside the church. And those processes of change, as we can see, some of them needs a further push from us to keep his legacy alive, such as the change for the caring of the common home, that we heard beautiful words and a beautiful ceremony, but we are already missing Francis. We lack his radical views and for inclusion and change.
So we watch as the Pope's coffin travels across the Tiber River as it makes its way into central Rome. The streets lined by people holding up their cameras, as is the modern way. And
maybe while we are watching this, there are some beautiful words he wrote at the end of his encyclical Laudato Si, on the care for our common home. He wrote something about the end of life, and he said something about this, that at the end of our life, we'll find ourselves face to face with the infinite beauty of God, and be able to read with admiration and happiness the mystery of the universe, which with us will share in an ending plenitude. So this beautiful, and he said, eternal life will be a shared experience of awe, in which each creature, resplendently transfigured, will take its rightful place and have something to give to those poor men and women who will have been liberated once and for all. I think these words that he wrote, maybe unintentionally thinking about his death, is a beautiful expression of what we are praying for. That we are praying that Pope Francis now is contemplating this infinite beauty of God, where every creature takes its place, but particularly the poor.
Well, he was a pope of firsts, was he not? The first Jesuit, the first from Latin America. And how important has it been for you in Argentina to have a South American pope? We know that Central and South America and the US represent, what, nearly half the world's Catholics. What has it meant to Argentina?
Well, to be honest, we have never imagined that there was going to be a pope from Argentina, from the end of the world, that he said when he introduced himself at the beginning of his pontificate. And it's the Argentine person that represents us all, perhaps beyond the football teams or sports. And we're very proud, although he was a figure that, because of our political situation, while he was alive, there were mixed feelings with Pope Francis. Half of the country loved him, and the other half were a bit adamant. But now that he's dead, everybody is realizing how important the Pope was, not just for Argentina, but also for the world. The repercussion of and the effect of what Pope Francis' effect in the world, it's amazing. And I think all Argentinians now are mourning him, and including the people who were talking against him and who didn't exactly coincide with his views. But now we are all realizing that his contribution to the world is far beyond Argentina. He was really a pope for the world, particularly for all the disadvantages all around the planet. Here in Argentina, I can tell you, I'm with
the 3 Ps.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, apologies. I was just going to say, you mentioned your 3 Ps, peripheries, people and the planet. What would it meant to him to have all those people out lining the streets of Rome as that Pope-mobile passes by?
I think it's absolutely beautiful. This is, I think the liturgy, although it was a beautiful liturgy and quite simple for Roman standards, particularly the coffin, very simple. But I was missing a little bit the presence, or at least at the first row, the presence of all the people he included in us people of the church. For example, indigenous people. I didn't see any representative of indigenous people or representative of young people, or the women that he appointed as very high officials in the Vatican. I would have put them at the front alongside the priests. But I think now the Pope, the coffin, while it's taking the coffin through Rome, we can see all the gratitude and the cheers, and I think this is what he deserves, to be even in death, to be cheered and to be among his people. That was what he wanted, not to be one for them, but within them.
Augusto Zampini Davis joining us there from Buenos Aires. We appreciate your time as we listen, Alistair Bruce, to the applause through the streets of Rome.
It's such a respectful and gentle way in which people like to connect with a moment, and we felt it in the Mass too, and it's just natural, and he is among people who have felt led by him in whatever way they saw his leadership offering, and he's leaving now at the end of a life of service, which was so beautifully described by one in Argentina who knows exactly from whence Pope Francis came.
And the route heading towards a major crossroads in Rome, the Piazza Venezia, and then heading east towards the famous Roman Coliseum, another indicator of the history of this day.
And a place to which popes regularly come to reflect upon the sacrifice of Christians in a sport of performance that took place in ancient Rome. And, you know, much of that reflected on and taken into account as, you know, everybody in their own way responding to this moment, some running obviously to keep up. And this amazing yellow tape that they've placed everywhere to stop people parking their cars and to prepare the streets of Rome for this remarkable send-off, this conveying of a pope to a separate place from St. Peter's, which is where so many of them have been laid to rest. But interestingly, St. Peter's was built in the time of Paul V, and Paul V is buried also in St. Maria Maggiore, and right next to the place where Pope Francis will be laid to rest, beside his beloved picture of Mary, the Mother of Christ. And she will undoubtedly, from that ancient icon, look down upon this good and faithful servant.
A police officer or soldier deployed every 10 metres on the route. We're hearing from Italy's Interior Ministry. 5 police helicopters patrolling Rome's sky. They've taken security extremely seriously. Not surprising with the delegates from across the world. That meeting between Donald Trump and President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine taking place inside St. Peter's Basilica, quite extraordinarily, on the day of the Pope's funeral. A man who really took focus of peace and the war.
Passing the great memorial to Victor Emmanuel II, who was the focus during the Risorgimento, the reunification of Italy in the 1800s. It's such a massive item at the heart of this great city itself. Almost seems out of place sometimes, with its own altar to the land and to those who gave their lives for that period of reunion of Italy. And I think for Pope Francis, he sought a reunion of the world. And that's how he invested his effort as a religious leader, to try and convince people in the way that at the Mass, the bread and wine, which became the body and blood of Christ and was shared for the last time around Pope Francis, it is the central tenet of the faith that he held and that he has given such an example for as he is conveyed towards the place of his final rest.
And the Vatican has said that 40 people holding white roses will form a guard of honour. Well, there we have the unbelievable Coliseum. Anyone who's been to Rome will know it well. Real crowds around the Coliseum. I was speaking to the Archbishop of Westminster about this. Cardinal Vincent Nichols, who suggested it was the martyrs in the Coliseum which would have attracted Pope Francis. The gladiators who fought, the enslaved who fought for the entertainment of the crowd in Roman times. those taking a high point in the upper arches of the Coliseum, looking down at the crowds, the view of Pope Francis's coffin, sealed only last night in that Pope-mobile, which helped him meet the crowds as he would want to do.
Every city has different parts in which different parts of society live, and the thing about Santa Maria Maggiore is it's right next to the railway station. It's a bit of a tough area of Rome. It's where those who are having a tougher time live, and of course, again, this was where Pope Francis felt best. And he went in the last week of his life during Holy Week to visit the prisoners nearby, and he said to them all, "I wish I could change my place with you." It was just a constant capacity within his heart, bolstered by his faith, to find the most dispossessed and those at the bottom of their life and lift them up and make them understand that in his faith they could find joy and encouragement.
Those ancient Roman walls have lived through history. Pope Francis telling his doctor at the weekend his last regret was that he was not able to bathe the feet of the prisoners that he saw on Maundy Thursday. He did it in the first year of his papacy, including 2 women, 1 a Muslim, showing how this Pope broke with tradition. The Basilica, where he is heading to now, one of 4 papal basilicas in Rome. Its structure dating back to the year 434, its core intact, though of course undergoing several rounds of restoration. The Basilica, home to that famous icon, the Salus Populi Romani, which Pope Francis has often visited to pray, sitting there before and after his travels. It is there he returned after being hospitalized with double pneumonia. It is a sacred place of Marian devotion. And of course, Alistair, he was a Jesuit by tradition. What difference would that have made to the way he was pontiff?
Well, the Society of Jesus, which is the name of the Jesuits, is a committed group of priests who will serve to their very end the direction they're given by the leadership of the church. And it was almost surprising that a Jesuit should be chosen to be that leader. And he always took the martyrdom of the saints, and particularly the leadership of Ignatius, the saint who had created the Society of Jesus, as a guide, and used it to encourage and enthuse the evangelism of the work done by those priests under his leadership. I mean, he became a Jesuit and was almost immediately made the leader of his area as the leading Jesuit. And because rules were the guide of it, it was interesting that he found that leadership and delivered it on the streets in Buenos Aires, in the toughest areas of that city, amongst people who desperately needed someone to care for them. And he and his team of Jesuit priests did their best to push against the relentlessness of poverty and the endlessness of the challenges that the people he worked amongst faced. And it didn't tire him, it made him joyous. And he constantly advocated for the joy and the hope that is in the idea of the gospel and the work of the gospel and how it affects people in their daily lives. Not everybody is caught into the religious way, Not everyone who he gave his time to was in any way religious, and yet he managed throughout his devotion to service as a Jesuit and as a Jesuit Pope to do his best and to provide an example.
So soon approaching the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, to be met by 40 people holding white roses who will form an honour guard for Pope Francis on the steps to welcome his coffin for its burial. Among them, we're told, the poor, the homeless, prisoners, migrants. The white roses, a return to the idea of legendary snowfall that occurred during the dedication of the Basilica. According to the legend, a snowstorm occurred on a summer's day, and the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to Pope Liberius, directing him to build a church on that spot, which became Santa Maria Maggiore. It is a day commemorated by releasing white rose petals from the dome during liturgy. The white roses symbolising purity and the Virgin Mary's role in the event, making it a significant Marian devotion. Father Robert Sirico joins us once again as we watch the crowds in Rome applauding their Pope.
Yes. Well, he's the Bishop of Rome. And this is very dramatic. As I mentioned, I had been to, now this is my third papal funeral. But this, I've never seen this scene before, that the body of a pope should be brought through the streets that he governed, in effect, as the Bishop of Rome, and to see the number of people just greeting him. And of course that, I think it's mostly an Italian tradition to applaud the body, which I hadn't seen until I saw it at John Paul II's funeral, and I found it so inspiring. If you had told me about it, I thought it would be insulting, but it was so inspiring to say, you know, good work, thank you.
And we've been discussing why he chose the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, which it is approaching now.
Yes, you've described it very well. You know, in the chapel, as I understand where he's going to be interred, I've celebrated Mass at that altar, and it has, if I'm not mistaken, the largest single whole piece of lapis lazuli in the world. You face the altar, because it's blue, which is the Virgin Mary's color, and you face this wall of lapis lazuli, and it's really magnificent. I mean, I have one pair of cufflinks that have some lapis in it, but to see a whole wall of it is remarkable.
And indeed, so it is said, the manger, part of the manger, a relic of the manger that Jesus was born in.
It is very much a part of the Roman Catholic faith to find objects that are venerated because of their tradition, and it is to this great place that the Pope now comes. His final wish is to be fulfilled by his loving Church. The bearer party that has so carefully looked after the late Pope from the very beginning of this process of his obsequies, now about to play their last responsibility to the Pope and to take him to his place of entombment. On the coffin we can see the simple cross, and below it the coat of arms that he adopted, with at its centre the bursting sun, which is the symbol of the Jesuits. Again, the Master of Ceremonies, Archbishop Diego Ravelli, taking responsibility for the process right to the very end, and travelling with those, the cardinals, who will take him towards the icon that he loved so much, that was presented to his predecessor in the year 593.
So the white roses held the symbol of the purity of Mary. Those who worked with the Vatican, specifically chosen. Those in need, helped by Pope Francis and always in his mind.
Travelling with the late Holy Father, Cardinal's now wearing choir dress, and also some members of his family who have come to see off this august member of the Bergoglios at the conclusion of his papacy. The entombment will be a private event, and it will be a chance for those closest to him to see him to his final resting place. But inside St. Maria Maggiore will be the final part of this blessing at the end of the life. And it is itself a remarkable basilica. And it holds, like so many of them do, so much art to emphasize the beauty of the promise of heaven. The bell rings out to call Pope Francis home. And as a priest, he is carried into the church, head first, as though if he was stood, he could celebrate the Mass. As the procession moves in and the coffin is conveyed, inscribed on the coffin itself the motto that Pope Francis chose, Miserando atque elegendo, meaning lowly but chosen.
Credit in me, non mori et
Francis, from the world you've served, as the Pope leaves sight of this earthly world and makes his way to his final entombment. Beside that remarkable icon of the Virgin Mary, so adored by Romans since the year 593, and to which Pope Francis always came to make oblation, most recently after he left hospital. It is the final request he made, that he should be laid to rest under the gaze of Mary and Christ child.
Passing beneath the famous gilded coffered ceiling, passing beneath the gilded coffered ceiling, seen by thousands this week, this now a place of pilgrimage for so many, as those white roses are laid beneath the icon.
Held now, but above the coffin, the icon to which he came so regularly during his pontificate, to lay before the Virgin Mary and the Christ child all his hopes and aspirations of leadership and service in Christ. And now to his resting place.
Pope Francis's tomb has been made with materials from the Italian region of Liguria, the land of his grandparents. In the small town of Cogone, a plaque of slate commemorates Jorge Bergoglio's great-grandfather, Vincenzo Sivori. He travelled from Italy to Argentina in the 1800s, there raising his family, including his granddaughter, Regina Mario Sivori, Pope Francis's mother.
And I sense that at this time we will probably leave this private ceremony of entombment here in the Basilica Santa Maria Maggiore, but ever watching and ever present. And for those Christians who know this basilica and this icon, our thoughts are with those who see this final act of respect and reverence to Pope Francis.